Today, we're not only in Two Rivers, Wisconsin, we are also in Ogden, Utah. And in this Hamilton Hang, we're going to explore letterpress pathways that are available to hopeful printers to be. So if you've been plotting and planning how you could be a letterpress printer and maybe haven't taken the leap yet, you're in the right place. We'll also get an introduction to Thomas printers and Ladies of Letterpress. We get to talk shop with Kseniya because she opened Thomas printers in 2005. She was trained as an intern at the print shop of the Gutenberg Museum in Mainz, Germany. Thomas Printers is a full service commercial letterpress and design shop. They do letterpress printing, foil stamping, edge painting, die cutting, envelope lining, which is really exciting. In fact, we've had a couple of commercial print shops in a row now, and it's so fun to see the differences in all the shops. Kseniya also is the co-founder of Ladies of Letterpress, a professional organization that provides a community where both brand new and experienced printers can learn from one another, share resources and ideas, and help letterpress be a thriving, exciting, and multifaceted art and craft. And I want to say thank you because I'm part of Ladies of Letterpress, and it's a wonderful organization. So thanks for all you do there. It's very exciting, and I'm glad someone started it. Yeah.
Thanks, Deb.
Yeah. So I'm going to hand it over. Thank you, Kseniya, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. So
thanks for having me. I was going to do like one of those fade in things, but I wanted you all to read my sign that's in the front part of our shop right here. Those are words to live by. You know, like Stephanie said, we've been doing this more or less since 2005, although I told her legally, I think it was a couple years later. But isn't that how we all get started? And it was 2005 where I was like, I want to be a printer, but what kind of printer do I want to be? I have no idea. So that's why I wanted this to be sort of like an ask me anything sort of hour. Otherwise, I'm very capable of monologuing, but that's not probably the most interesting thing. And it won't surprise you to learn that it was kind of a decision to become a commercial printer, sort of, but then, you know, other stuff creeps in and you try to find a way to be your own kind of printer. So like she said, the introduction was great and very comprehensive. I have to say very little. I started in 2005 in Pennsylvania, but I'm from Utah. And just parenthetically, it's going to be 70 degrees today and we still have snow on the mountains. So isn't it a wonderful world? But I started in Pennsylvania and I got my first press after working in Germany for 6 months. I lived there for a year, but was working in the Gutenberg Museum for 6 months. And that was a huge eye opener. I liked typography, but I had no idea about the history of printing. I had this dim view of Gutenberg as some historical figure, but who maybe was related to Steve Gutenberg, the actor. I don't know, but I set type and printed stuff there for 6 months, and it just, as you know, it just gets under your skin, and you want to do it more. So I came back here to Pennsylvania, and I found a 12x18 CNP from Bill Wellifer, some of you might know, and it was $150. I was like, oh, you can't go wrong. It had all kinds of quirks. It made lots of weird noises, and it was way too big for me. I'm 5 feet tall. But I used that for 10 years, and I built my reputation on that press. And so, you know, it's like, and once you start buying stuff, it starts finding you because people have equipment laying around, or their dad or their grandpa. And once they see it in use, their eyes light up, and then they give you more stuff. So now I sold that press a long time ago to a couple of bright young things who unfortunately are no longer in business. So I'm not sure what happened to that press. It's kind of sad. But I have 2 CMPs now, a 10x15 and a 12x8, which we of course still use. A perforator right here, which is sort of being used for display, cute little Sigwalty thing. And then some type, which I keep for, you know, nostalgic purposes, but don't really get to use very much. And then in the other room of my print shop, I have my production machines, which are 2 Heidelberg windmills, one of which has an aftermarket foil attachment from a company called Lutz. And the first one I got was from Ray Nichols. I don't know if he's here. And he and his son Trey delivered it to me one day. And then we had lunch. And so that press was a total life changer, and allowed me to go from slow to pro, or at least
I most definitely am here today.
Oh, hey, Ray. I still use that press every day. That old lemon you sold me. Yeah, so I'm sort of like giving you the highlights, I think, but you know, for 10 years or more, I worked in a shop behind my house. It was nice. I caused it to be built, you know, it was just basically a glorified garage with really good heat. And I worked back there kind of out of sight and just toiled away on the compound. And then in 2015, I hired somebody to redesign my website, and we wound up falling in love, and we moved out to Utah, my home state, in 2018, which has been really awesome. So now I'm in a building called the Monarch. It was a garage from the 1920s, like a big garage for people coming across the country. So it's very sturdy and vast. It's like 30,000 square feet. And I have of that 600 square feet. So they made it an art space. So where we are is a little bit smaller than where I was before, but the benefit is, which I had not experienced, was being in public, which is awesome. Like people wonder, well, so obviously we started in 2019 and then everything closed down last year, just let everything shut off. So we haven't had a proper year here in public to see what it's like, but it's starting to come back as Utahns get vaccinated. And it's really nice to be in public. So I can show you a little bit of the shop, and I'll try to go smooth. So we have two spaces, basically. The front space is kind of the tidy display space. This is the wall I was standing against. I have stuff from all of our friends, Linda Sherman, Margot Ecke, a little bit from myself. Our ceremonial first, or what did you call it, Stephanie? The founding member of the
the charter membership L down there.
Yeah, charter member.
Thanks for your support.
2013. Oh man. We have started to do a little bit of retail just for fun, and also because we have a public facing shop now. So Eric does the designs and we amuse ourselves. And I obviously do the production. So these are a little C&P family. I'm so attached to them. It won't surprise you. Like, I hope somebody asks me moving questions, because that was definitely the most hair-raising experience of my life. But we moved 15,000 pounds of stuff across country and nothing broke.
Wow. And is that a nice big window so people can peek in while you work?
Yeah, exactly. So this is like the fish tank part. But we were the first people to move into this building, and they sort of were so thrilled that it was going to catch on that they built us a lot of custom stuff. So that's what it looks like. I don't know if how visible that is. Lots of paper
nice to
stuff.
see. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get a lot of paper people. So we made this little sign that says "Welcome Paper People." And that goes out into the rest of the building where there's event space. So this is down the hallway where artist colleague friends work. We've got painters, sculptors, stained glass artist, a florist, a quilter. It's pretty neat, actually. And this is the press room, and I didn't clean it up for you all. So this is what it looks like every day. We're sort of, we've got more storage than we've got floorage. And everything is sort of crammed in here. You know, Graham Judd at one of our conferences recently, Ladies of Letterpress conferences, that is, taught a really fascinating class on how to do a lot with a small space. And I have taken that to heart, and that is, you use every little nook and cranny. And so what we don't have yet are shelves to go up this wall. We just have Kyle Dury's print that says woman's work over there, so that when I'm working over there, people know exactly who is supposed to be doing it. You know, my business is called Thomas Printers, and I still get asked, is it your husband's shop? Is it your dad's shop? No, it's my shop. So that may be a good segue to talk about Ladies of Letterpress. you know, if you're starting out in printing or you want to start out in printing, there used to be, especially 20 years ago, a real paucity of information. Like there was no YouTube really. There was no, well, I mean, there was, okay, but there wasn't a lot of useful stuff on it. And it was really hard to try to figure out how to do this. So, you know, the first job I had when I came back from Germany was at this place called Digital Letterpress in Austin, Texas. I don't know if any of you all know him. Bradley Hutchinson is his name. He's an extremely good printer and also typecaster. He prints a lot of fine press books for people, but he also does run-of-the-mill job printing. But it was from him, you know, just by accident. Like, so I was Googling letterpress and he came up because he'd printed the Pennyroyal Caxton Bible, which Barry Moser's Bible, he printed like the $30,000 edition. And I was like, hey, are you hiring? Which, you know, if you are printing long enough, people want to work with you. And it's just, I understand better now, like to some extent, everybody's a commercial printer because you have to make money unless you don't, for some reason, like you have another job or it's just a passion project for you or something. But he's like, no, but you can come make my photopolymer plates for me if you'd like, for, you know, just piecework. And I said, okay. So he was doing a book that required steel-backed photopolymer plates. And it took me not that long to realize that you need to wear Band-Aids when you're making those things. So you slice your fingers, all the ribbons. But it was like, I just got contact knowledge from being in there. Like I discovered a Pantone book and I was like, what's this for? And I discovered bulk paper purchasing, you know, and it just, I think in a lot of ways that was formative because he was a commercial printer. He was also a really fine crafts person. You know, I just learned a lot of stuff, namely that I don't want to make my own photopolymer plates. So I've been using boxcar presses services since it was just Kathy, Harold, and maybe one other person. And you used to email the file and then call Kathy to make sure it got there. So that is one thing that I am happy to send out to other people. So I was going to talk about Ladies of Letterpress. So I just, you know, being like totally green to this whole thing, I was trying to find a network and there wasn't a network in place yet. At least not one that was like intent on sharing knowledge and fostering the next group of people, because it has become clear over my career that like when people see letterpress, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, they want it. They want to do it or they want to buy it. And they definitely want to touch it and get it all dirty, you know? So the more people, I feel like the more people out there producing stuff, the greater the pull from the public is for our stuff. But that didn't exist yet. And so I was just bouncing this idea around and like trying to struggle my way through. I applied to University of the Arts in Pennsylvania because they had a book arts program. But no surprise, I got waitlisted because they're like, you don't have any art experience. I was like, I don't want to be an artist. I want to be a printer. And so they like to go away and take some art classes and then you can reapply. Well, I didn't do that. I just dived in and started to, you know, print stuff and mess it all up and print wedding invitations and mess them up. And you only mess up so many wedding invitations before you stop messing wedding invitations up. There's no room for error in those. So by chance, I was at Oak Knoll Book Fest, and I forget if this was 2007, somewhere around there. And I happened to see a patch that said Ladies of Letterpress on it, like just a little patch. It was at the University of Iowa's table. And it turns out that Jessica White and like her group of grad students had just amongst themselves made this little club called Ladies of Letterpress. And I was like waving this patch at her, like, does this exist? Is this already a thing? And I didn't know about it. She's like, calm down. And so, but I called her after that and we talked for a long, long time. And we decided that this could be a thing that there was a need for, you know, that just like a way to try to go around like the gatekeepers or the people like on the much aligned, but very useful Letpress listserv, you know, that there was just like no hazing. Let's all learn this together, you know, like letterpress. I mean, in some ways, there's some things you can't be told. You have to have the experience. And so, but that creates kind of a top-down situation where you have to find the person with the knowledge and then beg for info. And so we're like doing a top around method where there's somebody with a lot of knowledge and then they spread it all around, and they don't make you feel bad because you don't know anything, you know. So we started that, I guess, in 2008, and just like emailed our friends and had about 20 members. And then somebody had the idea to have a conference. So we had a conference in 2010 in Asheville. It was like a proper hotel conference with ballroom rental and everything. But it was all panels. There wasn't any hands-on, but we had panels about copyright and all kinds of stuff. I can't really remember. I remember Amos Kennedy caused a ruckus with some, I forget why now, it's so long ago.
That would never happen.
But like a fun ruckus, like
Of course.
lots of, you know. So we did that, and then we're like, well, this is one side of it. This is like the theoretical side, but we need a practical side. So I think the next year it was still in Asheville, and Asheville Bookworks at the time was functioning. I think they've closed since then. So we had a bunch of demos there, and it was like, if you can imagine, like 100 people smashed into a really small space trying to see like Kelly McMahon teach a really good class on printing with Kelsey's. And so we have shifted almost all to the practical side now, like a skill sharing couple of days where we try to find people that we've heard of who are doing interesting work, but who maybe aren't on the national letterpress radar. And then they formulate a class or a workshop of some kind, and then they take it on the road. And so they've been able to do that, which is really gratifying to see. And, you know, at the same time, we have fun classes too that aren't necessarily, won't help you in your commercial proceedings, whether you decide to be a wholesaler, a greeting card maker, a stationer, a commercial printer, a fine press printer, somebody who makes awesome posters, a community print shop. So we try to sort of lay the groundwork for lots of different paths, and while trying to keep in mind that you can do a lot of stuff. Like you can be a commercial printer who makes greeting cards and does occasionally fine press stuff, or you can be a community print shop that does charitable printing for your local organizations. You know, it was a fateful decision to become a commercial printer a long time ago, because it meant I had a lot of bosses, and I was challenged by a lot of different projects. And like I said, I really did mess all kinds of things up before I figured it out. I was going through my archive, which is a box before this, and I was thinking about organizing this talk around like, here are the various mistakes you can make, but they're really just so awful. They're really just like, I remember once, I don't mind telling you this, that this woman called me and she's like, "You've ruined my wedding." And it was because the impression wasn't deep enough. And I have to agree, but maybe not that your wedding is ruined, but I really did do a crappy job, and let me try it again. So that was very rambly.
So actually there's one point that I loved in the comments, and Nina brought up that Ladies of Letterpress is not all ladies. And that is one thing I think is good to say.
That is very true. And that brings me to a good point where, especially the last 5 years, we've been thinking a lot about this and talking a lot about this, and especially last year too. You know, it started out being called Ladies of Letterpress because we had a hard time with a lot of old guys, to be honest. And it wasn't like an in your face sort of thing, but it was like, there are more ladies doing this than men. So why is it so hard? Like, why? This doesn't have to be this hard. You know, there's so many ladies doing this. But, you know, it does, we do get asked a lot of questions like, why do you have male instructors then at your conferences? Well, because we find the best people for whatever it happens to be. But especially now, we're trying to be as inclusive as possible. And we've always had the thought that anybody can join, but like, we're not going to change the name, you know, like it started out as a group for lady printers. But it includes everybody. I don't know. It's very complicated.
Yeah, well, but it is a good resource, and it's so sharing.
Yeah,
which I appreciate.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess in calling it ladies, it sounds like it could be exclusionary, but that is totally contra our ethos for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you even have people interested in joining after this. So there you go.
Oh.
You see,
Oh,
you've introduced them.
you can join for free. We've been trying to think about like a membership program for years. And actually this year, we're after the end of last conference where we had a lot of good brainstormings, we're trying to connect, we're trying to do a better job of connecting new printers with established shops. And we're working on that. So we'll see what comes of that. But we're still very interested in like smoothing the way for new printers and keeping letterpress going as hard as we can.
Great.
So like, do you guys want to like talk about stuff? I have a bunch of work that I can show you. I can talk about what Thomas Printers does.
I think one last Ladies of Letterpress question is how many members? And then if anybody wants to put in the chats what you're interested in, or you can lead the way, Kseniya. Do you know how many members?
Just go.
Yeah, you know.
We can talk about industry trends and then so Ladies of Letterpress has about somewhere just north of 3,000 members.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
We don't have any notes other than people like what you're saying. Someone said
that's
they
great.
like industry trends, and seeing people's work is always nice as well. So
okay, well, let's talk. We can segue into we can talk some work, and then is this other camera irritating? No, it's probably not even noticeable. So I was glad actually the images that you pulled from my Instagram, I think, because that was a really fun project that was at the start of 2020. And so we're like, oh, this is going to be an amazing year. That was something I did for Basecamp, which is a project management company in Chicago. And every year they send their they give fabulous gifts to their employees. It's apparently a great place to work. And this was under the art direction of Lindy Sinclair in Chicago. But what it was our part was sort of easy compared to the rest of it. Was this, you can see the whole scope of the thing on my Instagram, but what it was I did like 7 different little cards, letterpress printed, duplex to key color, various key colors with these little patterns stamped on the back. And so what each of their employees got was a vacation anywhere in the world. And you build this little box that was laser cut brass in like some kind of wood base. And once you assembled it, the little cards were inside. And so you could see it was like a choose your own adventure thing. And they had organized it for like, if you're going to go with one other person, or if you want to go with a group, they suggested a bunch of locales. So we didn't get a free vacation, but we got to do this kind of cool project that, was not technically that challenging, but the whole thing together was really neat. And one of her concerns, she used to work for Roner Letterpress, Lindy, the art director. And she said, she was really concerned about this pattern on the back being centered after duplexing. And I was like, don't worry, we figured this out. And I'd mostly figured it out. But this was another learn by doing. And it's like there were enough of these that like I had to be sort of mechanical in my process. So I just built a jig. Like I just built a square, and then these were untrimmed when they were duplexed, lined them up as best as possible and trimmed. And they're maybe some of them are off in their own special ways, but they're all sort of pretty uniform. So they were happy with that. So that was a cool project. I was doing like a lot of corporate work at the beginning of 2020. And I did something for George Nakashima Woodworkers that involved embossing, duplexing, digital. And I think that's all. Oh, and edge tinting. So that was just a business suite for their whole company. It's very subtle, so I won't hold it up to the camera, but I learned how to emboss that way with the help of Graham Judd. And it's just something I'd never done before. I did it on my foil press, which has a heated base. So it's sometimes like these sort of intense clients, you learn a lot because, there's no room for error. And it's just like, well, or field notes is a good example. So I told Steph that I was thinking about showing you all the field notes video about letterpress printing, because it shows, not just because I'm in it, but because it's really good, and it will bring a tear to your eye if you haven't already seen it. And it brings up another kind of printer that is pretty not new, but is, I feel like, having more of a place on the stage, and that is the activist printer. So it features Ben Blount, printing posters and so forth. But anyway, so Aaron Beckloff designed a cover and then had me print it. And it was the longest run I've ever done on a windmill. It was 18,000 2-color sheets. So, I was like, had a taste of what real printing is like, where you stand at the press for 8 hours a day and it just runs and runs and runs. And so everything is keyed in really precisely, your registration is where it ought to be. Nothing's bouncing around. Your ink is all dialed in. And that was fun. And it was also long. So I recommend the video to you, which, it doesn't have that like gauzy letterpress look. It's like real printers talking about printing, and it made me love letterpress even more. So, I mean, I do sort of like, I'll just show you a few more things, and then we can ask me anything. I'm happy to talk about, like I said, like press moving, prices of stuff, where I get this and that, my life philosophies, all kinds of things. So we've started to do like, when it's the stuff we design. Oh, I guess that's one thing. Like, I'm not a graphic designer. Like, I can set Bickham, center it, and print it if that's what somebody wants, but I can't do fancy stuff like this, or like things that with illustration. It's like, looks like clip art when I do it. So I try to set technical challenges for myself when I'm doing my own printing. Like, so we designed this in-house, and the color is actually a gradient. I'm sorry if this is crappy. I probably should have made these into slides, but that looks like, so it starts bluish at the top and fades down to orange at the bottom. So I like to do things that are tricky or that customers maybe wouldn't pay for. This is my New Year's card from several years ago. And this is 2 registered plates, both of which have a gradient to make it look like the sky and some clouds. This one is subtle, but it's more hot pink at the bottom, fading to like a pale peach. So that was one plate. And then the top plate was the sky, which is bluish to whitish. And I just love that effect. It just seems, it's like so fancy, but also so magical, Oh, I have an example for industry trends. Handmade paper, everyone wants it this year. And I mean, once in a while we get a pretty adventurous client. So this is 3 colors. Wedding invitation, COVID cancellation, unfortunately, but it was a really nice invitation. So wedding invitations, it goes without saying, is my bread and butter. So it was really rough last year when no one could gather. It was pretty rough. But I have never shied away from wedding work because you are a big part of somebody's day. And if somebody cares enough to order like bespoke paper products, they are discriminating individuals. And, it's like, I want it to be less of a commodity, like, oh, we've got to get invitations, and more like, I'm going to go down and have my bespoke wedding invitation experience, like if you were ordering a custom suit or something like that. But it's one of those things like commercial printing. It's not a very glorious job. I mean, and printing has been a commodity since it was invented. So, I don't want letterpress to be precious, but I want people to feel special when they order it, I guess. So this is like a fun 2 foily one. Yeah, I mean, just to elaborate on wedding stuff, like I see a lot, especially in forums, like, oh, I never do weddings. I feel like that's sort of a luxury, I've never had, except for the woman whose wedding I ruined with my poor impression. People are happy. If you do a good job, they're really happy. And it's, for one thing, and for another thing, it's really lucrative. Like the wedding industry complex is real, and stuff is expensive, and people expect to be expensive. But you can do some really beautiful work and do some really challenging stuff for weddings. I don't have an example here, but I was trying to find it. But just for a save the date last year, it was like this origami envelope that folded up. So the die across, it was like a work and turn of the scoring for the creases so that the whole envelope would fold up. So we made this like zigzaggy sort of scoring die, and then, not scoring, creasing. And then, I guess it's the same thing, but turn it and it all folded up. It was foil stamped on the inside. And then their little card had laser cut out the date that also got canceled. That I had never done like a origami thing before. And she wanted us to fold them and seal them with wax and put them in cello. And so we did all of that stuff. I don't do too much handwork because I always tell people like I'm too expensive to stuff envelopes, but sometimes like I don't care. And so I'm like, okay, I don't care either. I'll watch HGTV and fold your envelopes. So, I mean, if you are thinking about commercial printing, I encourage you to do it. It's really, it's full of variety. And especially if you do that, do wedding work, obviously do it and keep people off of minted. This was a fun one we did a couple years ago too for an anniversary. This was actually designed by a really talented designer, Michael, can't remember his last name, in Houston. His business is called Anticipate Invitations. And they were having a 10-year anniversary party in Moab, Utah. And so we made this card for them. It's a popular one now that I'm back in Utah.
Well, and we do have lots of lovely questions. They've been writing in instead of unmuting. So however you want us to do.
You guys are so polite.
Yes. I was going to say, I think people want to talk about paper a lot because you've brought up some good paper things.
Okay.
And I would say the first one is, this is a lovely question. How do you preference paper people customers? Like, what does that mean in your world?
Oh, that is such a good question. So sometimes paper people will have pre-purchased their paper, and sometimes they want to send it to me, and sometimes it'll work, and sometimes it won't. Sometimes paper people have made their own paper, and actually last year we had a job where the couple had ground up their old Carhartts pants and made paper out of it. That was some very chewy, tough paper, I'll tell you what. But usually I kind of assume that people who want letterpress printing are already paper people. They aren't going to buy an off-the-shelf kit from Staples, although that has for sure happened. They know that they want some kind of handmade thing to announce their nuptials. And what I also offer is that they can call me and they can like see their job over there on the machine, or I can give them an update. I can tell them why this or that won't work. And that I think is a very valuable thing to offer people.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite paper supply sources or any favorite papers you like to go to often?
Yeah. Well, shout out to Flurry. I really like Flurry from Boxcar and Smock. They are Bella Figura. It's a really nice paper, especially for digital printing. It has a coating. Well, actually, obviously, Lettra, Nina Cotton, Lettra Impress. There are lots of them with digital coatings now. So like we combine a lot of digital with letterpress as a way to help people economize, or like the last few years, the watercolor effect has been very popular. And so a paper like that's pretty smooth with a digital coating is nice. I just bought like probably a year's supply of Nina Cotton, which I really like. I'm not sure, I sort of lost track of all the machinations that went on there, but it's like for those old timers like me, it's like Lettra used to be. It has a lot of like fiber texture. It's not super heavily calendared, and it's like really soft and nice. So that's what I've sort of switched to from Lettra. And I get that from a local paper supplier. So one thing, like being in a public space now, like I've really tried to cut my bottom line everywhere I could. So I was sort of casual about buying in bulk. Like I'd buy from Legion in half bulk really. But I went to like a local paper vendor, and they backed a truck up to the shop and just, brought it to me. So I like that. And then everything else is special order. Since my shop is so small, I could show you my my shelf of terror. That's like, so it's samples that I show people. It's envelopes. It was supposed to be stopgap and we haven't added anything else. And that's my colored paper store right there. So like, I use Key Color and Color Plan a lot, but I don't warehouse them because there's too many options.
I did a little bit of sharing quickly, but you guys, this will be
Thank you.
recorded. You can watch it again next week.
Okay.
So,
You can also email me or text me too, and I will tell you stuff. Like there's no knowledge that I have gained over the last nearly 20 years that's so precious. I can't tell you about it.
That is one reason I love the letterpress community.
I will even tell you how to edge paint if you want, but maybe later.
Bum, bum, bum. That's the bonus round.
The holy grail.
Yes, exactly. This is a really good question. A couple people have asked along these lines is what sort of digital printing are you using? Are you doing ink or toner based, or how do you marry the letterpress and the digital?
Oh, yes. Well, so I was using a shop that had an HP Indigo, which also was able to do white, and that it was great. But like they were sort of a hassle to work with just because they didn't do a lot of small quantities. So it was sort of like every time I sent an order in, it was sort of like an ask, I thought. And then I thought about bringing it in-house, not in an Indigo, but like just a high quality laser. And so we did do that for envelopes. But now I use a company that has forget what kind, but it's toner based. And for most projects, it's just fine. Cause like I say, it's just like on a little card or something. And yeah, so.
I'm going to keep going if this is, I mean, we've got lots of good questions.
Happy to do
it's like
this.
rapid fire round, man.
Oh, good.
There were some good questions about pricing and contracts. So we're kind of turning a corner, but do you mind talking about pricing, or it's a wild
I'd
world
love
out
to.
there. Great.
I'd love to. So I'm both the most expensive letterpress printer in the world, and I'm also the cheapest letterpress printer in the world. And so this is what I hear from clients sometimes, or like potential clients when I send out estimates. And so I don't know, like I cover my costs, and there's actually a really good article about this written by yours truly on Letterpress Commons about pricing. And it's boils down to cover your expenses and try to make a profit. And that's going to differ for everybody. So I do a lot of work for people in California because California rent for letterpress printers is high. And so their prices are more expensive than me. And it doesn't mean that I'm like, undercutting anybody. It's just that I don't have to pay what they have to pay. And I also don't have employees. So, and that's sort of intentional, like I'm not very growth minded, and I'm happy to have a very lean and mean shop. That said, like I also, by now just know what stuff costs. And every so often, like I'll sort of check around and see that I'm still sort of on par with people who are doing the same thing I am. There's lots of one people shops out there. And, and I raise prices by like 10 or 15% a year, just because it's necessary. Like ink costs this year. I don't know if you all heard about this, but like the raw materials of inks is pretty fascinating in terms of how globalism can affect letterpress printers. Also the whole paper source thing with like, that whole hedge fund stuff affecting letterpress printers was surprising. But anyway, so like ink costs are going to go up like 20%. So I can eat that, or I can fob it off onto unsuspecting customers. I will choose the latter. So if there was a question about contracts, I don't have one, but I require 50% upfront to start work, just to get everybody's heads in the same place. Like, this is going to be an expensive thing. Here's some money. Let's do it. And then I release the shipment once the rest is paid. And like I have had people say, well, then what do I do if I don't like it? But my whole business ethos is just like, I will fix it. I'll do it again. So you don't have to have leverage over me. I've gotten paid, and I'll make sure that you're happy.
Your service does sound amazing. I was going to say, you sound like you're always working for your client in a really strong way.
Well, I really try. I just really try.
That's the most we can do, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're turning another corner. I love this question. Allison wanted to know, what was your favorite didn't expect it to work but did moment?
Oh man. Oh, that is such a good question. Gosh. That happens kind of a lot, actually. And I think it's tied in with like the larger question of you don't know what you're good at until you try it, like sometimes like I was an English major and I have moments where I was like, I shouldn't have gone to a liberal arts school. I should have gone to trade school and been a mechanic or something, but because I didn't know I was good with my hands until I was working on presses every day. Or like people would be like, do you fix these when they break? And I was like, well, they mostly don't break, but yes, I can change out stuff. Well, so that's the long way around to say like, the more you're working in concert with your machine, like the more you're like, I think to myself, I'm pretty sure it can do that, or like printing like a really long sheet on a windmill, for example. And I was like, well, it might get crunched, but no, it actually works. And there's little attachments to help you do that. Or like the embossing that Graham showed me how to do. I was like, these are the machines to do this. I just have never done it. And so I'm not totally sure how to do it. But, like I FaceTimed New Zealand and he helped me do it. So I guess that the origami thing was a good example because there were so many moving parts to that one. Like anytime you have to combine a lot of processes and it has to be right every step of the way, like it's very satisfying feeling to have it fold up into a nice envelope like it's supposed to. It's just like, yeah, I do know what I'm doing actually. And my standards are very high indeed.
Of course.
I guess it's like a life pursuit, in other words. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that's good. People are interested in, this is specifics, we're getting nitty gritty. They're curious about if you have a piece, do you mind sharing how much you charged for one of your pieces? Like if you could hold one up and say, oh, this is what I charged, or.
Oh, well, sure, I can do that with a couple of things. So of course, like when so I have like a little chat bot on my website. You guys have probably seen these elsewhere, but it'll send a text to my phone. And it means somebody like has an urgent question on the website that can't be answered. And about 98% of the time it's like, how much does letterpress cost? And I don't blame them. I don't put pricing on my site because there's too many variables. And I also want the flexibility to look at their project and see what it's going to involve. So I say it's a function of quantity, ink colors, complexity, et cetera, paper. Like people are like, well, I only want 5, I only need 60, not 65. And then we have the teachable moment where it's like, well, paper is the cheapest part of this equation actually. And even if it were printing on copy paper, it's like not going to be that much cheaper because you're paying for my experience and good attitude, and the plates are expensive too. So like this one is on handmade paper. I think this is porridge paper. Shout out to them. We've been using a lot of it this year. In fact, I have a whole box of it down here that I get to do after we hang up. So handmade paper is expensive. It's made by hand. I think there were like 100 of these. And it probably came in right about at $4.10 each. This is on the other extreme. So this one involved an outside designer whose stock fee was $400 at the time, no matter what you wanted. And then this die is complicated. Like the squigglier the dies are, the more expensive they are. And we didn't do laser because they didn't want the singeing, that happens with laser, which is okay for some things, but like we didn't want that for this. So the die was $300. And then my printing, I think they only had like 50 of these, and it probably came in around $1,100. But you know what, then something about like every time the cost increased with this one, they're like, that's fine. I was like, who are these people? These aren't my normal clients trying to save money. And so I Googled them, and they had just sold an apartment in Manhattan for $42 million. And I was like, oh, I undercharged them by 1,000%. But obviously you can't do that. But, or then there's like, so the way I try to do good works with commercial printing is, I told you that I'm in an art space. And so there's lots of artists, all of whom had when we all moved in, terrible business cards, just awful. And so I offered to do them all for them for costs. So that led to some exciting ones. Like there's an art teacher around the corner, and we made her a small business card shaped like a palette, an artist palette. But like that helps people feel like their business is spruced up. I don't really lose money except I donate my time. And then everybody in here who wants them has beautiful letterpress cards. And so anybody, like, this is not totally selfless. Anybody who sees it, it's like, where'd you get that? They can say right down there. They're really nice. So we also do printing like for the building. This was for their grand opening. And we did this at cost too. And I like, when I can do it, I'm happy to do that because like I say, I don't want printing to just be a commodity. I want it to be special, especially for invitations. Like it sets the tone for the whole event. So there's a lot of philosophy behind
And it's a lovely way to build your community, right? Like you are surrounded by lovely printing and design, and it only raises the boat for everyone. So that's a really wonderful way to think about it.
Yeah, like don't settle for crappy stuff. You know, like
that's a good motto.
Don't settle for it.
So we're about 9 minutes away from an hour.
Oh, come on.
I have asked a lot of questions. Does anyone feel like unmuting and asking? We've had some people share some lovely links to how they estimate jobs as well.
Oh, cool.
And I think I've hit a lot of them because people wanted to know about cross-pollination between you and other places within your building. And if you just
okay.
on that.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? I'll be quiet for a minute and please ask up.
Just to cover my for a sec, like I do have an estimating spreadsheet that I troubled myself to make, but I never use it anymore because it always comes out to what I would have expected anyway. So unless something is very tricky, then I'll crunch the actual, or if there are enough other vendors involved that I'm not sure what my margin is going to be, then I'll use it. But I like my margin to be around 60 to 70%. And that's pretty normal for commercial printing.
What are the plans for this year's conference?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. It's going to be online again. And then, but there may be an offline in-person component for those folks who want to travel. We're still working out that part. And we'll announce the dates soon.
We are in a very similar spot for Ways Goose. I feel you and understand.
It's so tricky because I don't want to Zoom fatigue anybody, or like, last year was kind of like special. It was like, oh yeah, let's see what that's like to have a Zoom conference.
Yes, we'll do it once.
Yeah, yeah, and then everything will be normal again.
Yes.
Is it normal yet?
I want to thank you for a lot of because a lot of it is actually very validating. It's like good to have somebody who's running a commercial press say things that you'd already kind of figured out but didn't have anyone to validate you on. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah. I mean, you know what I've realized is that everybody makes stuff up as they go, especially in small business. It doesn't really matter what business, but there's certain things like you don't have to reinvent the wheel for, like there's certain, especially like technical things, you can puzzle it out or mess up and waste a lot of paper or something, but there's always somebody who knows, and like a lot of printers I respect have MBAs too. And I'm not as interested in that, but it would be very beneficial, for sure. Like I wish that all education came with like accounting, small business or nonprofit management, because that's the real thing. Like you need to know how to do that regardless. But I figured it out more or less. Oh, and the first time I paid taxes, my accountant was like, have you been paying your quarterly taxes? And I was like, my what now? So it only takes once of messing up your taxes too before you're like, oh, I won't do that anymore.
Yes. I'm sure you're not the only one on this call of all the learning process.
If you learn anything today, don't mess with the IRS.
I can relate to that one. One year I made too much money and then it was just all bad.
Oh, I know. I know. Well, I fixed that problem by becoming an S Corp. So if you want to know about S Corps, I recommend that too. I mean, I didn't fix it totally, but it was good.
That would be a valuable lesson, but also not as exciting as letterpress.
No, true. I know. Well, we could talk tools of the trade. So you need, in addition to your presses, you need a big letterpress tattoo. I don't know if you can see, like, I got this 2 years ago. I was going to get a little one and then I went crazy. This is like a redrawing of the Plantin printer's mark, which is a compass. And it's got my logo on it. So that prevents me from doing anything else for the rest of my life. And actually, Carrie Valenzuela inspired me. She has a beautiful printer's mark tattoo. Also, Paul Moxon has a small, tasteful one. So I know there's lots of people out there. So I think, like, you know, to fully commit, get the big tattoo. I mean, my mom had a tattoo before I did, so I felt sort of like justified, I guess.
I also like that you now have logo for life. Like,
I know.
like, this is it.
If Eric's like, let's rebrand, I'd be like, I can't. I would have to scrape this off somehow. I don't even know how that would work. So
Over the
tattoo.
years, you'll get a whole sleeve.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Oh no, I still remember how bad this hurt. I'm never getting another one again. Commitment to craft. I have proved it. I don't have to do it again.
Oh, that was a morning from mystery.
Right.
Somebody asked about education. And do you teach often? Do you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, that was kind of the plan for last year. Now that we have like a public space, was to teach more. I usually teach or have often taught a class at Ladies of Letterpress. Last year we did full color / 4-color printing, which was super fun. And I do like a platen press introduction because I really am a platen press believer. They're so versatile. They're so capable of so many things. Also pretty dangerous, you know. So they're capable of a lot of precision too. So I teach stuff like that. And then I have like fun classes once in a while, like Christmas card or Valentine's Day, you know, stuff like that.
That's lovely. I think that's a really good way to wrap up. We've hit our hour. Thank you. That was a wonderful path. It took so many directions and I appreciate it, Kseniya.
Oh,
So
my pleasure.
thank you for your time and thank you for all your sharing that you did today.
Oh, sure. Like I said,
Thank you.
email me if you have other stuff we didn't get to.
And I've put her links over in the chat box. I'm also going to say thank you for everyone for joining us.